There is a subtle, nearly invisible thread that runs between the unknown and the erotic. It is not lust in its raw, animalistic form, but a deep psychological arousal that begins not in the body, but in the mind. At the heart of a man's sexual desire often lies not clarity, but enigma. A woman who understands, intuitively or consciously, how to withhold just enough of herself becomes more than a person. She becomes a symbol, a mirror, a projection screen. She enters the realm of the archetypal. She ceases to be merely and becomes instead the bearer of mystery, and mystery is one of the most powerful catalysts for desire. When a woman is completely revealed, emotionally, intellectually, and physically, too quickly, she becomes, in the unconscious mind of a man, something categorized and contained. The psyche seeks novelty, but more precisely, it seeks the unfolding, the gradual revelation of the other. Mystery leaves room for the unknown, and it is the unknown that draws him forward, again and again. The unknown is the realm of potential, of fantasy, of what might be. In this realm, the woman becomes a story not yet told, a labyrinth not yet solved. He wants to enter it not merely for conquest, but for self-discovery. The unconscious responds most intensely not to facts, but to symbols. A woman who retains mystery becomes more than her name, more than her social identity. She becomes a symbol of something deeper. Her eyes that do not reveal everything, her silence that isn't cold but purposeful, her refusal to always explain. These become signs that she belongs partly to another world. That world may be one of deep emotion, of spiritual depth, or erotic darkness, but whatever it is not fully accessible, and that inaccessibility acts as a magnet. Mystery does not mean silence. It does not mean manipulation or calculated aloofness. It is more of an existential posture, a quiet knowing that parts of the self are not meant to be on display. Some aspects of one's inner life, when guarded well, become sacred. When a woman carries herself with this sense of inner richness and privacy, not the coldness of a wall, but the warmth of a secret, she steps into an archetypal energy. She becomes, in the imagination of the man, a gatekeeper to a hidden garden. And that garden, in symbolic terms, is always erotic. Not because it is purely sexual, but because it suggests life, beauty, and the forbidden. In myth, the sacred feminine is always veiled. The goddess is not met in the marketplace, unveiled and eager to please. She is found in the forest, behind the mist, at the edge of the world, where only the brave and the attentive may go. This mythological structure remains alive in the unconscious psyche of the modern man. He may not know why, but he finds himself more aroused by what he cannot immediately possess. Not because he is shallow, but because his soul remembers. His soul remembers the veil and longs to lift it slowly, with reverence. The erotic begins not with skin, but with soul, and the soul is inherently mysterious. When a man senses that a woman's soul is alive, that she has a world within her that he cannot enter at will, his desire becomes mixed with awe. He is pulled out of the ordinary and into the sacred, and sacredness, paradoxically, sharpens desire rather than dulls it. It is in the tension between the known and the unknown that the erotic spark ignites. When everything is visible, nothing is longed for. But when something remains hidden, hinted at, his imagination awakens. The imagination, once activated, is the true source of sustained arousal. The modern world encourages us to be transparent, to share everything, to leave no mystery unspoken. But Eros does not thrive in transparency alone. It needs opacity. It needs that shimmer, that veil, that subtle suggestion that there is more beneath the surface. A woman who understands this carries herself differently. She speaks with weight, pauses with intention, reveals without exposing. She knows that desire does not come from giving all at once, but from inviting the other to a slow unveiling. There is also psychological safety in mystery. When a man is given too much too fast, he may feel overwhelmed not because he does not desire, but because his psyche cannot hold what it has not yet earned. The mystery gives him space to approach, to project, to imagine, and then to slowly come closer. In doing so, he is not only drawing near to her, but also to himself. The mystery of the other always echoes the mystery within. To be mysterious is not to be hidden, but to be whole. A woman who does not rush to give everything understands that she herself is still discovering parts of her own soul. And it is this inner journey, this sense that she is still becoming, still unfolding, that makes her truly irresistible. For she becomes not just a woman to be desired, but a mystery to be honored, a story to be read not once, but again and again, forever revealing new layers. There is an essence in womanhood that does not arise from imitation, performance, or social convention, but from something far deeper, something rooted in the primordial soil of the psyche. Authentic femininity is not a set of behaviors, but a mode of being that radiates from the core of the self. It is not passive, nor is it merely soft. It holds both the power of creation and the mystery of receptivity. When a woman is deeply rooted in her own feminine nature, not as defined by others, but as revealed through her own experience, she awakens something ancient in a man, not just his desire for her body, but a desire for union, for surrender, for meaning. This feminine essence speaks to the archetypal realm, where masculine and feminine energies exist not as genders, but as universal patterns. When a woman expresses her femininity authentically, she becomes a living symbol of the anima, the inner feminine figure that exists within every man's unconscious. He may not be aware of it consciously, but he has always been seeking her. She appears in his dreams, in his longings, in his idealizations. She is not merely a woman, she is his lost inner soul, calling him back to wholeness. And when he encounters a woman who carries this energy naturally, without artifice, the encounter is not just physical, it is mythological. Authentic femininity is not about adhering to traditional roles or rejecting them, it is about integration. It is the refusal to split oneself into parts to fit expectations. It is the courage to feel deeply, to care without collapsing, to nurture without losing boundaries. This kind of woman does not need to be loud to be seen. Her presence is felt in the subtle weight of her attention, the way she listens, the quiet fierceness of her convictions. Her body moves with its own rhythm, unhurried by the pace of the world around her. She dresses not to seduce, but to reflect her inner harmony. And in doing so, she seduces more deeply than any calculated performance ever could. Men, though they may not articulate it, are drawn not to the imitation of femininity, but to its raw, unfiltered presence. When a woman is in touch with her intuition, when she trusts her emotional tides, when she can be soft without being submissive, she becomes magnetic, not in a superficial sense, but in a way that touches something primal within the male psyche. Her energy disrupts his need for control, challenges his intellectual defenses, and beckons him toward the vulnerable terrain of feeling. She becomes a portal not only to erotic experience but to transformation. This kind of attraction is not always comfortable. In fact, it can be unsettling, because authentic femininity does not flatter the ego. It speaks to the soul. It reflects back to a man not what he wants to see, but what he has forgotten. In her presence, he may feel both awe and confusion, desire and fear. She is not trying to be mysterious, yet she remains unfathomable. Not because she withholds, but because she contains multitudes. The authentic feminine is not one-dimensional, she is cyclical, fluid, paradoxical. She can laugh and cry in the same breath, love and rage in the same day. And this emotional truth, this refusal to be simple, is what gives her power. In a culture that rewards performance over presence, it takes strength to embody the feminine fully, to cry without apology, to say no with softness, to express desire without manipulation, to receive without guilt. These are not signs of weakness. They are signs of profound psychological integration. And when a man encounters a woman who holds this energy within herself, it stirs his own unconscious into motion. He feels pulled toward her not just because she is attractive, but because she is alive in a way that he longs to be. Sexual desire in men is often mistakenly reduced to visual stimulation or primal instinct, but beneath this surface lies something deeper, the desire to connect with what he cannot. The woman who is at home in her body, in her emotions, her own becoming, becomes the embodiment of that unnamed thing. She does not need to chase or convince or perform. Her authenticity is its own invitation. She calls to the man not from above or below, but from within, reflecting his own depths back to him. When she speaks from the heart, not from strategy. When she touches, it is with intention, not with agenda. Her beauty may or may not conform to conventional standards, but it is undeniable, because it radiates from a place untouched by comparison. She does not seek to be chosen, she chooses herself, and in doing so, she becomes the kind of woman that a man does not simply want, but yearns for, because through her, he senses the possibility of returning to something essential, something that has been lost, not only in women, but in the world. At the core of every genuine connection lies a subtle and often wordless exchange, an energetic resonance that moves beneath the surface of conversation and action. Emotional attunement is the capacity to perceive, feel, and respond to the inner world of another. It is not sympathy, not advice, and not manipulation. It is presence. A woman who is emotionally attuned to a man does not simply hear his words, she senses the truth beneath them. She feels the rhythm of his emotional landscape, even when he cannot yet name it himself, and in doing so, she creates a bridge, not only to his desire, but to his deeper being. Many men, shaped by a world that discourages vulnerability, carry within them vast inner territories of unexpressed emotion. They have learned to armor themselves with reason, with silence, with distraction. They often struggle to articulate their emotional states, not because they lack them, but because they have been trained to separate from them. When a woman shows that she can remain present with what is raw, what is unformed, what is unresolved in him, she becomes more than a companion. She becomes a kind of mirror, and through that mirror, he sees himself not as a role or a function, but as a feeling being. This reflection, this attuned gaze, awakens a longing that is deeply erotic, not because it arouses lust in the immediate sense, but because it stirs the soul. The erotic, in its highest form, is the movement toward wholeness. A woman who can perceive the child in the man, the wound behind the anger, the longing behind the silence, reaches into places he has kept hidden even from himself. She does not invade or expose these places, but her presence alone gives them permission to exist. And when a man feels that he is seen in this way, not judged, not fixed, but simply held, his defenses begin to soften. In that softening, desire takes root. This is not the kind of desire that can be manufactured through appearance or seduction techniques. It is the kind that emerges when the soul feels safe enough to be naked. True emotional attunement does not come from trying to be pleasing or agreeable. It requires the woman to be deeply in tune with herself, to have walked through her own emotional terrain, so she can recognize it in another. She must have held her own grief, faced her own shadow, met her own longing with honesty. Without that inner work, what appears as empathy is often projection or caretaking. But when her attunement arises from her own integration, it carries a clarity that is unmistakable. In the presence of such a woman, a man may begin to say things he has never said. He may speak of fears that surprise even him, share stories long buried, admit to desires he had not yet allowed himself to feel. Her ability to remain steady and open in the face of his emotional truths makes her not weak, but powerful. She does not collapse into his pain, nor does she retreat from it. She remains witness, a container, a subtle force of receptivity. And it is in this field that true erotic tension is born, the kind that does not dissipate after physical intimacy, but deepens with it. It is important to understand that emotional attunement is not the same as agreement or indulgence. A woman may be emotionally attuned and still challenge the man, still say no, still express her own truth. What makes her different is the way she does it, from a place of connection rather than opposition. Her no is not a rejection of him, but a reflection of her own integrity. Her boundaries are not walls, but expressions of self-awareness. And in this, she becomes trustworthy. Not because she is always comfortable, but because she is real. Men are drawn to this kind of truth. They may not say it, but they feel it. The longing for emotional resonance runs deeper than most men consciously realize. Often, they pursue women who appear ideal on the surface, only to find something essential missing. That missing thing is not physical. It is psychological, even spiritual. It is the felt sense that the woman is with him, not just beside him. That she is moved when he is moved, that she hears what he does not say, that her gaze sees both his strength and his uncertainty without diminishing either. In her presence, he begins to remember parts of himself that he had left behind, This remembrance is a kind of erotic awakening. When a man feels emotionally met, he becomes more embodied, more alive, more desirous. His arousal is no longer separate from his soul. It becomes an extension of it. He does not want the woman merely for her beauty or her charm, but for the way she brings him back to himself. Her attunement becomes a kind of music, and his body responds not just with arousal, but with reverence. The sexual energy between them is not mechanical or performative. It is born from the quiet fire of being known and still being wanted. There is a realm within each of us that lies beneath the polished self, the unspoken, the repressed, the feared, and the forbidden. This is the domain of the shadow, not evil in essence, but unconscious. It holds the aspects of our personality that society deemed unacceptable, inappropriate, or dangerous. And yet, it is precisely in the interaction with the shadow, our own and that of others, that profound transformation and intense erotic energy can arise. For a man, the woman who dares to live in relationship with her own shadow does not only attract his gaze, she unsettles his soul. She does not merely arouse his body, she calls forth parts of him that have long been exiled. Desire that is too safe often becomes stale. The erotic lives at the edge of danger, not physical danger, but psychological. When a woman allows herself to embody qualities that do not fit into the neatly defined categories of good or virtuous, she invites a kind of fascination that bypasses moral reasoning. She becomes unpredictable, not in the sense of chaos, but in the sense that her soul cannot be domesticated. Her smile might conceal a secret. Her softness might carry a flicker of rage. Her calm may rest atop a well of primal hunger. And it is this layered presence, this dance between light and dark, that awakens in a man a different kind of desire, one that is not just lust, but a hunger for contact with the full spectrum of the human experience. The shadow is not inherently destructive. What makes it dangerous is not its nature, but its denial. A woman who has faced her jealousy, her rage, her erotic impulses, her manipulative tendencies, her ambition, without judgment, but with awareness, becomes grounded in a deeper authenticity. She is no longer fragmented, she is whole. And wholeness is magnetic. Men are drawn to women who are not pretending to be purely light, purely kind, purely gentle. These personas may be appealing at first glance, but they do not last. Because the man, whether he knows it or not, is seeking something more alive, something that mirrors his own unclaimed chaos. A woman who has danced with her own darkness invites him to do the same. There is erotic power in that invitation, not because she tries to provoke or seduce through shock, but because her presence carries a charge. A subtle tension that says, "I have seen myself in the dark and did not look away." She may wear elegance, but beneath it lives the wild. She may be nurturing, but within her is fire. This layered truth disrupts the tidy categories the man may try to place her in, and in doing so, it awakens him. He can no longer relate to her as an idea. He must engage with her as a force. Many men carry deep shame for their own shadow material. They fear their aggression, their fantasies, their insecurities, their need. In the presence of a woman who has friended her own darkness, he feels less judged. Her ability to hold paradox becomes an open door. He finds himself speaking truths he would usually bury, expressing wants he had long considered unacceptable. And far from being repelled, she meets him with a strange kind of calm, perhaps even excitement, because she recognizes that his shadow is not his downfall, but his gateway to depth. This shared understanding becomes a bond more intimate than words. It is the quiet agreement between two souls that says, "We will not look away." The feminine shadow often includes erotic desire that refuses to be neat, ambition that refuses to be small, fury that refuses to be silenced. When a woman stops suppressing these energies, they do not control her, they empower her. She becomes sovereign, not by rejecting love or softness, but by holding all of it together. This sovereignty is deeply erotic to the man, not in a submissive sense, but in a symbolic one. She becomes the queen in the mythic sense, the one who does not seek approval, because she already governs herself, and it is precisely her independence of spirit that makes her irresistible. Not because she withholds affection, but because she cannot be owned. Sexual energy, when fused with the shadow, becomes transformative. it ceases to be only pleasure and becomes initiation. The act of intimacy with such a woman is not just release, it is confrontation. The man may find his usual strategies fail in her presence. His need to dominate, impress, or detach begins to crumble, because she sees through them, not to shame him, but to draw him out of the persona and into the raw, into the trembling, the truth, the edge of surrender. And it is in this surrender that his deepest desire resides, not to control, but to be fully met. To be touched not just by flesh, but by the truth of another soul who knows what darkness tastes like and has chosen to love anyway. In a world increasingly fragmented by speed, distraction, and disembodiment, there is something profoundly arresting about a woman who inhabits herself fully. Not merely someone who is physically attractive or fit, but a woman who dwells inside her body with conscious awareness. Her movement is not hurried by anxiety, her gestures are not filtered through self-consciousness, and her voice does not rush to fill silence. She is here, and her presence is undeniable. Not because she seeks attention, but because she radiates a grounded intimacy with the present moment. This kind of presence awakens something visceral in a man. It does not simply attract him, it anchors and disorients him at once, pulling him out of his mental abstractions and into a deeper, more primal experience of reality. Embodiment is not about perfection. It is not about walking like a model or acting with choreographed grace. It is something more subtle, more powerful, and less performative. An embodied woman breathes deeply, listens not just with her ears but with her skin, speaks not just with words but with silence and gaze. Her sensuality is not a performance meant for consumption. It is the natural extension of her relationship with her own aliveness. She moves through space as though she belongs there because she has claimed it from within. This internal claim is what strikes the masculine psyche. It reminds the man of something he is often disconnected from: the felt, the instinctual, the present. Presence is erotic because it is rare. Most people are only partially here. They live in the future of imagined anxieties or the past of unprocessed wounds. Their bodies are in the room, but their awareness is elsewhere. A woman who lives in her body as a temple, who walks with attention in her feet, who gestures with the honesty of her limbs rather than the performance of her ego, communicates something ancient and trustworthy. A man feels her before he understands her. He is drawn in, often without knowing why. Her presence bypasses his defenses. It is not demanding or manipulative, it simply is, and in being so, it commands attention more than any attempt to impress ever could. This kind of woman is not necessarily loud, flirtatious, or overtly seductive. In fact, she may be still. Her stillness, however, is not emptiness. It is charged. There is a vitality in the way she sits, the way she looks, the way she listens. Her body is not performing a role. It is responding moment to life as it unfolds. That responsiveness is what makes her deeply attractive. It shows that she is attuned to her instincts, that she trusts her sensations, that she honors the wisdom of the body, rather than treating it as an object to control or criticize. In her, the man senses a return to the animal, the intuitive, the sacred, and through her, he is invited to do the same. There is a quiet power in a woman who touches her own neck with presence, who sips water as though it is an act of reverence, who walks as though each step connects heaven and earth. She does not have to try to be sensual. She is sensual because she is sensate. Every breath, every blink, every pause becomes part of the living poetry of her being. Her body becomes a language that does not need to be translated. And a man, even if he cannot articulate it, feels himself being spoken to in a language he had forgotten but still understands in his bones. This embodied presence also reflects emotional depth. It is difficult to inhabit the body while suppressing the soul. The more a woman allows herself to feel, to grieve, to rage, to long, the more rooted she becomes. Her emotions do not unmoor her, they anchor her more deeply into her physical existence. This rootedness is what gives her a sense of gravity. She does not float above life or attempt to transcend it. She descends into it. She tastes, she touches, she trembles. And it is in this trembling that the erotic is born, not as something to be consumed, but as something sacred to be encountered. A man in her presence feels called to slow down, not because she asks him to, but because her pace is non-negotiable. She does not rush toward climax, metaphorical or literal. She lingers, she breathes, she watches. She teaches him to inhabit time differently, not through words, but through the sheer weight of her attention. He begins to notice the tension in his own body, the shallowness of his own breath, the restless flutter of his mind. And slowly, through her example, he begins to drop into himself, into her, into the moment. This descent is not passive. It is arousing because it reconnects him to life. The woman who lives from her body rather than just her head is not only desirable, she is dangerous to the old order of things. She cannot be commodified. She cannot be easily predicted. Her beauty is not replicable because it arises from within. She does not have to speak of energy, she is energy. She does not have to explain her sensuality, she embodies it. And that embodiment is not for show, it is her home. In her, the erotic becomes not something to be achieved, but something to be remembered. The man standing before her is no longer simply a pursuer. He becomes an initiate drawn into the ancient temple of the body, of presence, of now.